I'm bored. Let's read a book. Oh! After getting the bid for the sub-prefect's chairs, and after getting exactly the lumber I wanted from Bretto with a bit extra thrown in for no extra cost, we still had to actually craft the chairs. Besides worrying about the actual work, I worried about a lot of other things. I worried that Destron would get sicker and die. I worried that Bostrick would slip with the plane, or that I would get careless. I worried that Gerald would somehow find a way to attack me. I worried that Antonin would find out exactly who and where I was and attack. Even though I ate, I felt harried and thinner. "You look tired," Deirdre told me. Since I felt tired, I probably looked that way as well. Every night I set wards on the shop, but I wasn't exactly sure what good they would do, and I kept my staff close to my bed. I used my senses to keep studying the wood each step of the way, checking to make sure that no hidden cracks or stresses would erupt to mar the wood or the finish. When I found two, both Bostrick and Destron thought I was crazy for refusing to use sections of what appeared to be perfectly good wood. "It's good wood, Laris." "Not good enough. It's flawed." "How? Where?" "It just is." How could I explain without letting them know I was a beginning order master? If the honored craft master who claims he's only a journeyman says so, it must be so. What bothered me most about Bostrick's flip comment was that he and Destron both looked at each other, nodded, and didn't say anything more. I groused and I growled, and even Deirdre stepped away from me at dinner and supper. Not only did I smooth the finish myself, I even worked with the varnishes until I had what not only looked right, but felt right all the way through. Then I spent time steeping the chairs in order, reinforcing their strength with order and more order, until chaos itself might have had a hard time sitting in them. We got all 5 chairs done, and done well. Bretto lent us his cart, and Gerlach even pulled it, with more than a few protests, to the same front steps of the sub-prefect's house. I hadn't planned on the welcoming committee. Not only was the scowling Gerald there, but Perlot stood at the back, as did the other crafters I didn't know. The sub-prefect was not there, but a thin man in a uniform, some sort of functionary, was. First, they had us line up the chairs side by side on the granite paving blocks. In the morning light, the officer stared and scowled. He looked under the chairs, he studied the joints, the finish. He compared each chair with every other chair. He ran his fingers over every exposed surface. Bostrick, standing behind me, began to sweat. Even though the day was overcast and the heat of a late summer day had not yet arrived. I pursed my lips, knowing that the inspection was far from normal. The one reassurance was Perlot's presence. With each inspection, with each frown by the officer, and each accompanying scowl by Gerald, Perlot's faint smile became more pronounced. Finally, the officer turned to me. "The chairs seem acceptable." He pulled out a long paper, and his servant proffered a pen. "Put your mark at the bottom." I read the paper, but all it said was that the sub-prefect had accepted 5 chairs for the sum of 10 golds. So I signed on behalf of Destron, copying his mark as well for good measure. The officer's eyebrows raised, but he said nothing. Gerald edged forward to look at the chairs, finally shaking his head and looking at me. For a long time it seemed his eyes rested upon me. Just waited for the coins, which arrived in the leather pouch. Although I could tell they were good, I checked each against the steel of my dagger, since no tradesman would have done otherwise. The officer nodded, as if to himself, and seemed reassured. Gerald looked back at the chairs, then at me, before walking back toward the avenue. The other crafter did not know how I stepped up to the chairs. Unlike Gerald, he stepped up to me. "Good work," He nodded pleasantly, and his whole matter inside and out was honest, even if there are traces of chagrin beneath. As the officer's servants began to carry the chairs inside, the officer sniffed down his nose. "That is all, tradespeople." I inclined my head. "Thank you." He ignored me in turn. "Dang fine work there," rasped another voice. Prolate stood by the cart traces. Gerlach whinnied. He wanted out of the traces. The sooner the better. Bostrick looked at the pony nervously, then back at me. "Thank you. No, I meant it. Sedenio was trying to figure out a reason not to accept them, and he couldn't. I thought the same, but the chairs were good. They should have been. I sweated enough over them." "You underbid them more than just a little, given the quality." The craftsmaster's voice was wry. "Master Drill seemed upset," I observed in a neutral voice, checking the cart harness. "He was, but he'll get over it. Good day, Laris." Burlot smiled briefly and stepped out into the lane with his quick, short steps, looking pleased and with the world as he left us with the restless mountain pony and an empty cart. Most important, we had 10 golds, 5 of which could go towards the quarterly levies. "What do we do now?" asked Bostrick, wiping his forehead. "We get out of here before they tell us to, and we find some more work to do. Hopefully something that you can do more of." Bostrick swallowed. "I can't do things that good." "Not yet. That doesn't mean you can't learn." I led Gerlach around to see the cart facing toward the avenue, then climbed onto the hardboard seat. "Come on." Bostrick scrambled up next to me, and we headed out to return him to the shop and the cart to Brettel. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, please like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss out on any of my videos. See y'all in the next one. Goodbye!